I'm indeed like educated as an architect. Yeah, I do have some background as well in art. But what we saw from also the previous presentation is, does it start? Oh, sorry. Buildings, they really, or our built environment, it actually contains a certain narrative. And this is what I was like, I did study buildings and I still design them, you know, like, but I got, after making a research on the interrelationship between democracy and the space, I understood that actually our politics are not represented through the political institutions, but through the environment around us. And so my practice is indeed is more based about what constitutes our environment. Like, so as an architect, we ultimately we design environments, and before you add something, you always kind of like need to understand what is the previous layer, you know, like, and what kind of new narrative you are creating and what was the old one. And so it's not really a surprise, I think, for you that we are kind of like in the phase of our planet now that we get into a lot of crises, and our understanding also of nature is changing, though it was not always, of course, like that. But through my work and researches, like also through the education, for example, I'm interested to explore like new conditions of which are about the colonialism that relates actually to each of us. So it's colonialization and of land and of sea and of air, and how every one of us is related to that. So for example, we study the locations that embody certain type of conflict because of the overlapping of the different forces. So it could be like a surveillance, which create new type of the landscapes. It could be the mining of the sea. It could be nuclear, of course, weapons, and etc., or the traces of our trade ships, which really something that is seemingly invisible, but has a presence in our physical environment. And so I would like to reflect quickly on one of the case studies, like, so just give an example of the understanding of nature. It's, for example, like I come from the Ukraine. It was a former Soviet Union, and in the Soviet Union, they had an idea of correcting nature. So they had, for example, Stalin had this plan, 5-year plan of land transformation to stimulate industrialization of the Soviet Union. And he actually didn't really care that after this 5 years, how the environment gonna change. So this is an example, for example, an example of the Aral Sea, which was one of the largest inland seas, and which became currently at kind of that dried, like, so it was a huge catastrophe. And just to show how it's how our political systems and the operation of our land creates the new environments, and how our ideas, like what we think about nature, is shaping our future. So how it's important to define what you believe in. That on the top you see this Aral Sea. So it has a very interesting position on the border between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and it has these different rivers which were the source of this sea, but they were redirected in order to give water to agricultural lands around it. And as I said, like, it's dried almost immediately, and it was known for politicians. They knew that this would be. They even thought that that might be the destiny of this Aral Sea. So kind of like it was a domination over the nature of our political systems, let's say. And so you can see how this RLC became dry throughout the years, and then also how this environment affects, or this problem becomes also, of course, international. How, for example, this it's quite a dry area, and it's created like a lot of dust, and this dust all of a sudden crosses all the different borders, and it creates a lot of health problems and for the population around, and also it has a lot of pollution because of that pesticides that from the agricultural land. So it's a very very dirty place, let's say. And I would like just to give an example of the current narrative that we are heading in that it's not, of course, a new one that about the energy transition. It's energy is the base of our political system, so it was always there, but this is about the energy transition. And this is an ideas about how to outsource the energy transition of European Union to other lands. And in this case, it's Africa. This is an example of the Desertec project, which is currently developing into new type of hydrogen, etc. And this is one of the projects that I'm currently doing. I cannot really show it fully, but I would like just to say that there are a lot of huge solar plants, for example, which are built exactly in the global south, with the idea to transport this energy towards the global north, so it's to Europe as well. But these projects itself, they actually are used and for the authoritarian regimes of the countries there to grab the land from the very vulnerable population there. But it's also again creates with the idea that it's a green energy, it kind of becomes this green grabbing, because when we hear like green energy, we tend to accept everything, but that's actually, it also devastates a lot of water resources and has really a bad impact on our surroundings. So I'm trying to say that that we have to be very conscious about what we are told and what kind of like dogmas we believe in. These were just a few examples of how our politics, or like let's say certain invisible forces, has a direct influence on our physical environment. And with one of the recent projects that I made, No Innocent Landscape, I would like to also quickly give an example of how within my practice I also translate this research into space, because this is what I'm interested in within my practice, is space narrative and how to use actually that physical environment to represent the narrative backwards, or how to speculate and to twist certain ideas of visitors, let's say. And this project was about the shooting of MH17 site, which is in the eastern Ukraine, which was between the Donetsk and Donbass, and this is a reconstructed plane, which this image was a big inspiration for me, because it's kind of this plane was reconstructed from a lot of very small pieces backwards, and this is what exactly I told, that design could be this tool that gives shapes to what is invisible, so to tell what actually happened. So that the plane was shot in the Donetsk region, which actually where the war was already from 2014, and it's also an area of a lot of traumas. And this is a kind of very schematically indicates that this area is positioned also on the border between this Donetsk and Luhansk, but with the border is also a river. This is an area where the mining is very present, so it's a lot of illegal mines are there, a lot of pollution from the from the previous wars. So it kind of has these different forces coming together in one place. What is also interesting is that what we see as at that time, Donetsk and Luhansk proclaimed an international border actually between each other. So they were different. There were different governments between Donetsk, Luhansk, and the third one was the government of Kiev. But underground, what you could see is that this is the scheme of mines which interconnect Donetsk and Luhansk. So the border, which man-made border, doesn't really actually make sense. And also the thing here is that Luhansk is positioned a bit higher, and due to the differences in the landscape, the water, when it's not controlled properly, it actually floods another territory. And this is what happens when there are two different governments which do not want to interact. They kind of actually just flood one another, and this water spreads the pollution on a much larger territory. So this is the scheme of a drawing of a river which runs through this area, and it starts from the Russian Federation. It enters Ukraine, it brings pollution to Ukraine, it gets even more polluted within the area of a conflict within the Donetsk and Luhansk region, and then it goes backwards to the Russian Federation, and then it goes into the Black Sea, polluting spreading pollution also on the global level. So quickly to kind of sum up it, so what you could see is that in this area, the usual understanding of our division of borders, that kind of usually you perceive borders vertically, but in this case it becomes horizontal because these kind of ideas between the sky, surface, and underground, they become mixed up. Like the plane comes from the top down, you know, like the pollution comes into the earth. Simultaneously, the people who mine, they bring the earth from underground towards the up. So it's a different type of understanding of borders that are here. Also, another aspect is that in this area is very full with different types of minerals. Previously it was known coal, but before the war there was found lithium, and lithium is one of the critical minerals that needed for the green energy transition. And in Ukraine, actually, there are much more of them. But simultaneously, thinking about this conflict that in Ukraine, that's the war in Ukraine that was started last year, and simultaneous transition of the European Union towards the green energy, European Union, they really missed these critical minerals, and they were really actually looking for them. And Ukraine is one of the countries that contains most of these critical minerals. And so what we are facing now and what we see now is that we are trying to go very fast from the fossil fuels towards green energy transition, which means that we go from the fossil fuels, they are positioned in the world very spread out in kind of large quantities, but critical minerals, in order to make it efficient to mine them, they are positioned only at few places in the world, which means that we're gonna transition from the more diverse powers in the world to really more concentrated power. So you, for example, could see that, for example, Uganda is one of the also countries that has critical minerals, and its political position is rising. So all the countries which which have these minerals because they are necessity for energy, and energy is a source, let's say, of power, they will become more and more relevant. And what is happening actually is that these critical minerals, you again need to mine them, and it's also a polluting process. So in my project, I was questioning, okay, so yes, we go to a new political system, so a lot of things gonna change, but at the same time, we go to the new type of colonialism. And I was making this project during the war. I was really disappointed, let's say, in humanity. And so I asked myself a question, okay, how can we go on? Also seeing how much pollution from the war in Ukraine was happening and so on. And I took as an axiom is that, okay, so how can we do our politics differently? Because our political institutions, they cannot really properly respond not to, let's say that they take our problems which are visible on the surface. So we could see that they failed to address COVID properly because it's a very complex issue that entangles different type of crises, like a collection. And at the same time, the war in Ukraine, that it is so complex that our political institutions just were unable to do anything about it. And so idea is that to take an axiom, and just to mention, axiom is something that when you, in the mathematics, if you come to the dead end and you don't know how to proceed, you take a new axiom to bypass that blockade. And by bypassing that blockade, you kind of develop different type of thinking, and at some moment you find a different maybe solution or vision, and you don't need this axiom anymore. And this is how I perceive the project. So to think that we revert our political thinking, make it more our democracy, let's say, more diverse by turning it on what is actually invisible. So this was in very short, but still a lot of information on the research. But the end of the artistic work also of the project were poems, and which were based on the existing facts, but trying to twist them. We also mixing with the dreams of people who died within this catastrophe. And if you will be interested, you can read more or ask me. It's online, but you can ask me about it as well. That was an exhibition, and there were like a short poems which connects to, for example, like this border control point representing. So if usually border is something that you go from A to B, here the border started to be an elevator which moves vertically, going like a nowhere. So it's kind of where trying to shift our dogmas of thinking. And this was, this was much better in reality, but this was the video. It's a very short part of the exhibition, just for you to get an idea.
In current conflicts, architecture can no longer assume control with its normal tools and thinking. But for that, a new language has to be developed. I perceive the project as an axiom that is used in mathematics to help bypass the blockade.
In this case, it is about the blockade of the impossibility to resolve current conflicts from the human perspective. The axiom, the truth without proof, has become the project. In the this project, I wanted to set free the tactical logic of the place in the form of architectural proposals, which are no longer limited to its situation, but become free to address the real issues and to give shape to the crucial interactions of the visible and invisible processes.
The mineral-rich regions of Donetsk and Luhansk are places of many abandoned dreams, unacknowledged people, and disputed human values. 298 dreams crashed into this territory and started to interact with the space and other realms. The territory became a ground of negotiation between sky, soil, and underground, between non-human and human. On this specific site, global issues are becoming less abstract. A true arena of political institutions.
Damaged places and destroyed objects, reality and dreams are pieced together to create a new narrative